England began their autumn internationals by falling short against New Zealand for the third test running, despite leading by 8 points in the closing stages. Today we review that game, as well as welcoming on British and Irish Lions and Wales winger Alex Cuthbert as his nation gets their autumn campaign underway. Welcome back to the Rugby Paper podcast. It was the first proper weekend of the sort of autumn internationals. It started with England All Blacks and that kind of lived up to the billing. We're going to review that today. Wales are also set to kick off their autumn series off the back of 2 defeats in Australia. They'll take them on again next weekend. They've got Fiji up first. Joining us today, we've got, he's got 57 Wales caps. He's got a British and Irish Lions test and try. And of course, that series win back in 2013. How are you, Alex Cuthbert?
Yep, very well, mate. Glad to be on. Thanks for having me. And yeah, hopefully we get stuck into a couple of good games coming up this weekend.
So the intensity sort of ramps up, doesn't it? I mean, you boys have got Fiji, then Australia, then South Africa, which is quite a nice order, I feel like. I mean, you obviously a few months off. You might disagree.
Well, we're going off the back of we haven't won a game in a whole year, have we? In a Wales shirt. So to have Fiji first up, straight up after, that's a tough first game. I think expectations are high with the squad that they've got, and I think the expectations from a lot of people in Wales is that we should be winning that game, even though they probably ranked a good few spots above us, had a good Pacific Nations. So there's a building pressure throughout this week that Wales have to sort of deliver on the weekend. I think for me it's a must win. I think in terms of just that confidence that it would give them going into the Australia week, and then obviously then you're playing the world champions. So expectations are probably quite low at the moment in Wales against those. But yeah, there's a building pressure, I think, for this game on Sunday. It's beginning to be a lot bigger. It's probably the biggest game since Warren's come back.
Yeah.
Are we assuming that this is a significantly stronger Fiji side than played at Murrayfield?
100%. Yeah. Speaking to people within the squad, they were pretty hurt, I think, after that game against Scotland. Just the way, how Scotland, I know they played quite well, didn't they, in parts, and took them to the sword, really. I think they've obviously got a few players coming back who will bring, that experience. But the Fijians love playing in the Principality Stadium, and they love playing Wales. The roof's going to be closed. The atmosphere is going to be, it's going to be pretty good. So, and they thrive off that. So Wales really, it's no mean feat to really nullify, their strengths early on, because they've been targeting this game, I think, for a long time, probably since the World Cup, in terms of trying to get a result, and they will be a totally different proposition this weekend.
Yeah, totally.
Let's look backwards before we sort of officially look ahead to the weekend. We've got to talk about England All Blacks. Let's just have Alex. I'm guessing you watched the game. We're obviously off the back of 2 defeats anyway over the summer. It's now happened again. Another tight game. Another game where we couldn't quite get it done. So it was a frustrating, familiar feeling, but it maybe tasted a little bit even more bitter this time. Being at home, we felt, I felt tactical decisions were wrong over the last 20 minutes, deeply wrong. But what were your emotions post game, other than loving seeing England lose?
You said it, not me. But watching the game, I was like, England, they were in control. I was like, they're definitely going to go on to win the game. I thought their kicking game was really good in midfield. Like the errors that New Zealand were making, the penalties. I thought defensively they were strong, and then they make an awful lot of changes at quite an early stage in the game. I think for me, when you play a team like the All Blacks, it's a different feeling in terms of there's no need to make too many changes against a squad like that, because you need to stay on top of them constantly through 80 minutes. You cannot let them have even 5 minutes of ball time like they did. They showed, didn't they? They looked like they weren't panicking. They were like, right, they're going to give us a chance. England did. They sort of just stopped playing England, didn't they? Bringing George Ford on. Thought Harry Randall coming on was a wild decision. I really don't get that. If they were losing the game, then yeah, Harry Randall's the man. But when you're winning a game like that and in control, Ben Spencer's kicking game is just on the money. You know, that's going to win you the game, is that middle third. Just don't give them any sort of inkling. And he had a couple, I think he kicked one not straight dead, doesn't he? I think around the halfway mark, just gave them easy ins. And I can see why they brought George Ford on, in terms of he usually would sort of finish the game with, you know, his kicking out of hand, you know, the sort of the crossfield bombs that they do. And Fairbosa, by the way, is an absolute weapon of a player, isn't he? What, for me, he's a test lion. But yeah, just strange decisions, changed the whole front row at once, you know, when the scrum was pretty good and then it got absolutely demolished in the last 10, 15. So strange decisions, especially against such a top side. You, as a player, they were like building into the game, and then suddenly to be dragged off after 50, 55 minutes, it's like, if I was those players, I'd be asking the question, like, what the hell? Why are you doing this? Which
if
makes me think,
Alex, you would never take him off. You would never take Spencer off until the end of the big match. Quins would never take Marcus Smith off unless they had to until the end. And they were, like you said, they were both probably playing their best ever matches for England. Well, Spencer obviously is his first start. So why would you do it? I mean, even at the time, it felt horribly wrong. And there was no retrospect going on here. It felt wrong at the time.
It seems to me that was their plan. That must have been a plan that they had going into the game, because as a player as well, coming off the bench, winning a game against New Zealand like that, that's mentally, that's to suddenly just get clicked straight into the feeling of a game, straight into the tempo. That is so hard to do. When you're losing a game, it's totally different, because you're chasing it, you're doing things, you're trying to make things happen. But when you're winning, you've got to understand how the game is flowing straight away. And I don't care if you're a 90 cap, 100 cap player, that's so hard to just suddenly get into, and to change your two linchpins in your scrum half and your 10, you know, like the two players that are your generals, they're the ones that put you in the right areas of the field. That was that was a bit of an odd decision, and it'd be interesting to see. I'm not sure if he had come out and said, "Yeah, I've made a mistake," or that was a plan. A bit of a weird one for me.
Part of it is player management, isn't it? I mean, if there was ever a game to show that substitutions for the sake of substitutions happen, you know, it could be seen as this one. But also, obviously, the knives have come out for George Ford. I mean, don't get me, it was hardly a George Ford masterclass, but you know, he was put in a fairly unfortunate situation. Harry Randall, similar. Yeah, he had a couple of poor box kicks. His pass to George Ford for the drop goal was also not very friendly. But the thing is, obviously, these guys came on when we were in control. We had an 8-point lead. And you're almost putting them in a position there where, should things go wrong, the knives then come doubly out, which in a way, obviously, George Ford is, you know, nearly 100 caps. He can probably handle it. Harry Randall's still fairly early on in his England career. And things like that, they can sort of get at you a little bit and sort of stick to your reputation as maybe not someone that you can bring on to close out games, when it's actually just a, you know, poor man management, really.
Yeah, but it seems to be a bit of a reoccurring theme, isn't it, in terms of bringing Marcus Smith off early? Like, has he played many 80 minutes for England? It seems to be a thing that Steve Borthwick does, is bring those halfbacks off early. I thought Ben Spencer was really good, kicking game. For someone that hasn't played for England for a while, I thought he was really good. Marcus Smith, like you said, he seems to be maturing as a player, which I just couldn't believe he came off. You know, in a game like that as a 10, like, I think Dan Bigger spoke about it in the week, in terms of like, you have that feeling of how the game's going, and he would have probably ended up getting better and better, because I think they would have just kept going at New Zealand. Because if you think about it, they played out in New Zealand, they lost in the last 15, 20 minutes over there twice. Where are their learnings? You know, in terms of, it seems they've just done the same thing again and again. So it'd be frustrating, because I don't think they're going to get a better chance to beat New Zealand like that for a long time, because they're only growing as well. You know, they're probably in a similar position in terms of rebuilding, aren't they? New coach, new teams. You got these new. They're finding all these players, like, you know, the back row. What's his name? Sititi, is it? Like,
just call him Wallace. We'll know the names for the next 10 years.
Yeah, but like,
he's as good a prospect as I've seen in many, many moons. So, I mean, the thing, Alex, with substitutions, I mean, yes, it may well have been planned, and there are plenty of coaches who go in with a plan that they don't shift. irrespective of the circumstances that develop during the game, they don't shift it. This guy's going on after whatever, blah, blah, blah. Or sometimes they do it off GPS, don't they? Somebody says, oh, this guy is flagging a bit. And that was the Ross Moriarty story, I think I'm right in saying, when Rob Howley, bless him, took him off against England when Ross had made sort of 4 momentum shifting tackles in the space of about 5 minutes, was obviously running hot, and suddenly gets a shepherd's crook. And no one, and even Warren said, well, if I'd been in charge for that game, that's not a substitution I'd have made. So sometimes it just seems that people get locked into a theory. They're either going to make a call on GPS or they're going to do it on timing, which is
it was such a mad call. It was such a mad call. You could pick up on the mic. Spencer had been managing the ref beautifully for an hour. The ref was on, it was a huge game. He was on the tenterhooks a lot of time, and I thought he was doing okay for about an hour. And Spencer was soaking up what he thought was a 50-50 calls, smiling. Yeah, got that right. We'll do better. He was in his ear on a few other things. He was doing the perfect Matt Dawson managing job at 9. So that was another reason he ought to stay on. And the other, you bring Harry Randall on, and what do you ask him to do? He plays like Ben Spencer, not Harry Randall. Well, if he's going to play like Ben Spencer, leave Ben Spencer on.
Yeah. I mean, what's immensely frustrating about it is that Borthwick had a very, very clear lesson in the semi-finals of the World Cup that you do not take people off when things, if it ain't broke, don't try and fix it. So he took Marler and Cole off in that semi-final, and England's scrum was beasted and the game was lost. The same happened this time round. England's scrum was beasted when he made the changes. I think that they were probably, I think that Stewart and Genge had probably shot their bolt to a degree in any case, but it showed again that what England have on the bench is no bomb squad.
Yeah.
In fact, it's a self-implosion squad.
Yeah.
And, it's astounding that Borthwick hasn't learned from his experience.
It's a squib squad. It's a squib squad. It's not a bomb squad. It's a squib squad. And the thing about it is, though, that this is the Springboks have got this model, haven't they? They won back-to-back World Cups. The bomb squad is sort of designed and developed by them. They do things on timing, largely, seems to me. That they're quite set in their ways in terms of when the replacements or substitutions are going to happen. But not everyone's a Springboks, which is, I think, what you're getting at, Nick. England don't have another front row of that quality to come on and give you half an hour. They don't.
But I will say the difference with South Africa, they make changes knowing when teams are at their weakest in terms of they concede the most points between 40 and 60 minutes, or that's why they make them early, because they then put the other team under serious amount of pressure, and then they get the rewards near the end of the game. That's how they're very tactical in terms of when they do them. Like sometimes they're like pulling off Lebok after 25 minutes. Just they are not scared to make those decisions. No. Where I feel like a lot of Northern Hemisphere coaches, they would never do that, would they? I mean, I've never seen it happen before, other than maybe when Warren Gatland pulled Adam Jones off and out in South Africa after 25 minutes. Never played for Wales ever again.
Yeah.
But
Eddie did a couple back in the day, didn't he? And I remember Andy Robinson taking off Henry Paul very, very early on and managing to leave himself without a goal kicker on the field, which was an interesting approach. I mean, radical to the point of, but no, you're right. I mean, I think that's a really good point. The Springboks are a step ahead, partly because of the way Erasmus approaches this stuff and is nice, and partly because they just have such a very strong squad in most positions. So I think there is, if you're going to continue with this number of substitutions in international rugby, they're going to be a step ahead for a while yet.
Yeah. And sort of on that point, England, in the last 3 matches against New Zealand, in the last half hour of the match, i.e. 90 minutes of rugby, have scored 3 points. That is how incredibly badly England tail off in the last half hour of a match. And that's either fitness or shambolic management of resources in the last half hour, and it's probably a combination of both.
Yeah,
it's a massive problem.
I don't think it's fitness. I actually think it's them going ahead and then not knowing how to just keep putting the foot down. I remember we were in the exact same situation for Wales. We were winning with 15 minutes to go, and we were, all right, boys, let's protect this scoreline. We got smashed 29, 15 in the end. These guys know how to play for 85 plus minutes. Where I find us Northern Hemisphere teams, we get into a lead and then we're sort of, right, let's kick the hell out of it. Let's just protect, let's defend. Let's not just go straight after them. Because if you look how many games have the Northern Hemisphere teams lost in the last 5-10 minutes against the Southern Hemisphere teams, because they are able to play under pressure, under fatigue, under enormous amount of pressure in defence. Their skill set is just another level.
Sorry. Go on, I'll go. That's a great stat, by the way, Brendan. That's from the last 3 All Blacks?
Yeah, last 3 matches against New Zealand.
But that's the difference, right? Is if New Zealand were 22-14 up against us, let's be honest, it would have been foot on throat time. Not let's bring on the sort of the passive cavalry and freeze the game out. And that's the difference, because we were there for the taking in the last 15-20 minutes there, and a team like All Blacks is going to take us, which is obviously exactly what happened.
Alex, I just wanted to ask you, is there a real reaction within squads when coaches make duff decisions about the
I think it depends how strong your leadership group is within the squad. Like the senior players, I feel like maybe the coaches that Steve's got aren't strong enough to be like, no, Steve, I don't think we should bring him on. Like surely Richard Wigglesworth would have noticed, like, right, I think Marcus needs to stay on. Just give him that confidence rather than just be like, okay. We don't, yet. And then obviously then in the squad, Warren has a leadership group meeting. So he'll have one of the younger boys, captain, about 4 or 5 of them. And then they'd have a meeting, obviously, after the game, be like, why are you making these subs? And they will question the coaches on decisions. And then that's the only way you can learn, isn't it? And then how you can then obviously hopefully resurrect the mistakes for the following week.
Would you say that the concept of having a set time to bring people on and off the bench, irrespective of what's going on in the game, is pretty well brain dead?
Yes, it's ridiculous for me. I remember Tom Francis got told he was only playing 50 odd minutes, so he prepared all week to play 50 odd minutes. He played a full game. So, so like mentally, he got told he was only playing 50 odd minutes and ended up playing another half hour. So it changes your mindset going into the game. If you're told before the game, you're 100% coming off after 50, 55 minutes, it changes the way you go into the game, I think, rather than, right, I'm in the game, I'm going to go until, like the GPS or something like that stops me, or, or the way if they're losing the way of the game, they're not quite on it. That's usually what happens.
It's about trying to maintain squad harmony by making sure that everybody gets a game, or is it physios, not physios, but S&C specialists saying, the GPS stuff is faultless and so on? I mean, there are times when it seems to me, if GPS decisions are being made about players, they're very often wrong. People get second and third wins in games. You can see it if they're allowed to stay on.
Yeah. I don't think GPS is. Usually, the GPS is used for obviously load and distance, speed, how many velocity sort of speeds you've hit. It's probably more used for players that are coming back from injury and like, right, he's hit a 60-minute mark, he's done his blah blah blah. But when you're fit and well in a test match, I'm telling you now, I wouldn't see Warren pull off a player if he's just done a couple of K more than he has done before. It'd just be ridiculous, like you're in a test match. Like I said, it's a totally different feeling after 50, 60 minutes. That it's really hard to just suddenly new player jump in and get that feeling.
Yeah.
So, I don't think having a set time is the right decision. For me, what Steve must have thought, right, we'll bring on George. This is the right time to bring him on. he can kick a little bit more, he manages the game a little bit more. But you've got to have that feeling of like, what Marcus is going well, he's kicking well, let's go after them. It must have been just like, right, let's sit back and protect this 8-point lead, and it ended up hurting them, didn't it?
I mean,
also, a rugby player, an international rugby player worth his salt, when fatigue's beginning to kick in, as it's bound to for half the team, because half the team are going to play 80 probably. When fatigue's kicking in, you manage yourself then, don't you? You actually manage your own contributions. You pick your moments a little bit. You just save some energy here and there. I can't imagine that, Alan Wynne-Jones, with his knowledge of the game, was ever particularly worried about playing 80 minutes because he could manage himself through 80 minutes.
Oh, that guy used to just, I don't know, he had the biggest engine I've ever met. But it's tough, though, when you're playing a team like New Zealand, there are no room for mistakes. When you're playing like maybe a tier 2 teams, like maybe, sort of the lower ranked teams, you do get away with certain things. But the All Blacks, look, even when Caleb Clark had that knockdown, what was it? 2 phases they've scored in the corner. It's not so much physically demanding; it's more mentally, just being absolutely on it, on what you're doing in terms of your kick chase, making sure you're in pairs, you're not going off on tangent, you're not flying out the line. It's your mindset in terms of next roll, making sure your roll is 100% right every single time. That's the hardest thing. It's not so much physically; it's just making sure that you're right on it mentally.
That's really interesting, because in the whole history of England-New Zealand games, I think there are only maybe 3 occasions where England have won the try-count.
Right.
New Zealand they got not played off the park, but they were on the back foot for quite a chunk of Saturday's game. And it's a 3-1 scoreline, isn't it?
You take 3 or 4 individual.
On which point, how good were Talia's finishes?
Chris, I watched it again. I don't actually believe that England were in the ascent for long periods. I think that it was pretty even Stevens. But the difference was that, as you say, New Zealand's attack and their ability to finish their chances is different league to England. I mean, they could have had 5 tries.
Yeah.
England. Really, apart from Marcus Smith's intercept and the bomb that they put up on New Zealand's line, they didn't come close.
No.
So their attack, the team that we saw beat Ireland and push New Zealand in the summer, and they played far more attacking rugby, constructive attacking rugby in New Zealand than they did at Twickenham on Saturday. Yeah. They were a pretty blunt object in attack.
Yeah, I will say New Zealand looked comfortable, didn't they? If it wasn't for their ill discipline, I think England were really struggling to get anything from their attack, really. I think they are lacking. They're not scoring enough tries, are they, for the team that they get, the pack that they have and the back line that they do have. They don't seem to probably get enough out of them at the moment, whether that's the game plan. But that's Test match rugby, Look, They had nothing in attack, but they were winning the game quite comfortably at one point, weren't they? So it's all about winning that middle third, which they did. And then they pressured New Zealand into ill discipline. And I've never seen so many errors or penalties from the New Zealand team for a long time. So
it was the same
that's
penalty.
just Test match rugby.
Same penalty 10 different ways, wasn't it? It was remarkable how many versions of the same penalty they gave away on Saturday. The All Blacks.
Yeah.
I mean, how many was it? It was like 13 penalties to 3 or something like that. But that's a cause of the concern as well, isn't it? In that, the discipline difference was so big, and yet we weren't able to win the game.
I thought it was a really poor performance by New Zealand. They were just kept afloat by 3 or 4 outstanding individuals. And the fact that there is a threat instantly, they get the ball. But it was a bloody bang average performance by New Zealand. I mean, the discipline as well, the handling, the unforced errors. God, if ever they were there for the taking, it was on Saturday.
Yeah. I mean, there were 4 penalties. I think 4 penalties for early tackles.
Yeah.
Tackles off the ball.
And there was many more early tackles than that. They got away with a lot there.
Yeah. And neither scrum nor line-out functioned in the way they want it to.
Yeah.
Speaking of penalising New Zealand. You know, inevitably our discussion about the haka last week pissed people off. This will no doubt do the same. Remember, obviously, Rugby World Cup semi-final 2019, we got penalised for crossing the halfway line. Will New Zealand, because I didn't actually know this,
Who
New
is
Zealand
we?
aren't allowed. So again,
Who is we?
England.
England. Okay.
England. They got fined because Joe Marler, Billy Vunipola, and maybe one other crossed the halfway line. This time around, the All Blacks advanced towards England.
Who cares? Who cares? Get a life.
Let me finish my point, Chewy. They crossed the 10, which apparently the All Blacks aren't allowed to do. Will the All Blacks now get fined for crossing the 10, not sticking
They
to
should
the
do, but Ollie,
shouldn't be allowed to have that haircut. The whole thing's ridiculous.
it's all a bollocks. I read in the papers that England rose magnificently to the challenge of the haka. They didn't, but they were moved 2 yards forward to where World Rugby said they could stand. Where behind all the photographers and cameramen, because that's what the haka is about. It's all about getting the shot as the mad Kiwis with all the throat slitting and that advance on the camera. That's all it is about. They behaved themselves like bloody Easter Island statues. It was, as ever, pathetic.
Doesn't answer my question at all, Brent, but thanks for the contribution.
Well, I'm not sure what the question was. Yes, they should get fined. They clearly advanced, but they won't because they're allowed to do what they want when it comes to the haka because World Rugby, have got no balls.
I mean, the idea that New Zealand dictate everything to do with the haka. There was obviously the incident when they played Wales, and Wales decided that they were going to play Land of My Fathers as the last thing before the kickoff. And they threw their toys out the pram and did it in the changing room, I think. Listen, as far as I'm concerned, the home side can do whatever it wants just before the kickoff. If it wants to have a rendition of a song or parade a banner around the edges of the pitch, that's up to them. New Zealand, if they want to go and put the haka in the changing room, do it in the changing room, that's their privilege.
Alex, what do you make of, if I can ask, what do you make of the whole thing?
I don't really know where the problem is. They've always done the haka. It's never been. I've always enjoyed it. I can't believe there's a fine for crossing the halfway line. It's absolutely pathetic. It's like the haka's bigger than rugby in New Zealand. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's just a thing that they do.
Buck Shelford, Alex. Only since Buck Shelford.
Yeah, only since.
It used to be the hokey cokey.
Yeah, I've seen a few videos of it, but I think it's more just a sign of respect, isn't it? It's something they have. If England or Wales want to do something beforehand, then why not? But at the moment,
why
I don't know why we don't.
Alex, why does the haka have to be the last thing? Because it's meant to be a challenge. So even they themselves are surely expecting something back. But no, it has to be. The protocol has to be that the haka finishes everything, and they get themselves lathered up, and the opposition have to stand there like lemons. I mean, why does it have to be like that?
Well, it wasn't the last thing in wherever it was. Where was the first test in 2005? Christchurch. The last thing was Brian O'Driscoll throwing that twig on the halfway line.
I know, and apparently the Maori elder had told him to do that, but that upset Tana and Kevin Mialamu, so they decided to try and kill him.
Well, he won't do it again, will he?
Because he responded to the haka in the wrong way. How mad? How mad?
No, they took advice from Maori elders as to what he should do.
Yeah, one born every minute.
And in fact, he did it 2 weeks earlier at the Maori game, and nobody complained about it. Apparently, Tana gave Tana a nervous breakdown. He did it wrong.
Sorry, guys. This one's on me for opening the door. No, but all I wanted to say is, by the letter of the law, whatever you think about the haka, I hope New Zealand are fined for advancing past the 10.
100%.
Just in terms of consistency, and that's not me being a sore loser. Exactly the same happened when we won back in 2019, and you don't
sound like a sore loser either.
I think they can. I think they do what they want. They've got the right. We haven't been able to beat them for 57 years, so they should be able to do whatever they want in the Principality.
And you have to stand there and watch.
You're not playing this year, Alex.
Our challenge is to get in within 10 points. That would be nice.
Well, it did make for good television, I have to say. The advancing, I don't know what it was like in the stadium, Nick or Alex. I presume you weren't at Twickenham,
no.
but it was good television. Before we move on to next weekend, I do have to. We mentioned Wallace Sititi very, very quickly, but I think his performance both in that match and of the past few months is worthy of more than that. Guys, I mean, he's 22. And you haven't, I think we all have him down as 100 capper already at this point, should he stay fit.
The bizarre thing is, 2 years ago in the at an under 20, he wasn't outstanding at all. He was just good, ballpark. And he suddenly seems to have become this sort of monster physically. I mean, he is a hell of an athlete. He's one of the best athletes I've seen on a rugby pitch in many years. And he's a ball player. I mean, those offloads he was doing was very, very good. I mean, I wonder what position they see him as long term. I'm assuming they'll want to switch him to 8 when Sevilla waves us goodbye.
I mean, I still think I'm still very reluctant to chuck the words Michael and Jones into this conversation, but there are certain similarities insofar as on Saturday he demonstrated once again that he just seems to play in different areas of the pitch to almost any other back row forward on view. And that's what Jones used to do. And part of it is pace, and part of it is anticipation, and part of it is the role that the side gives him, because he is a natural footballer and he does have, the ability to cut lines, cut angles, cut supporting lines, all that stuff. He's a natural. His dad was a bloody good player. But he wasn't as good as his son.
Yeah.
Well, they might, I mean, I think that he's good enough to play in any of the 3 back row positions. I think that's for certain. He made a hell of an impact. He's made a hell of an impact at 6. He appears to have the hands to be able to do the same at 8. And I agree with you. The analysis or the analogy with Michael Jones is appropriate because, and that's saying something, because the bloke is very, very quick, and he can play open side, no question. And he
also seems to have that calmness about him, Nick, doesn't he? Which Michael Jones had. Yeah. He was never riled at all. He seemed to be able to ride all the slings and arrows. I mean, it's a difficult comparison for the guy to live up to, but there are similarities there.
And he went the full 80, and he was having a great tussle with Cunningham himself, who had a pretty fine match himself.
He did.
Gutted when he was taken off. That was, that was a really good ding dong for the ages. Those two.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. Well, look, let's look forwards. Still on England, and this is just the one thing I wanted to raise. The team's been announced. Borthwick's gone early again. Alex, your Exeter teammate Henry Slade. We've been sort of touting for him to have the 12 shirt ever since his second cap, really, and he's finally got it. Probably 60 caps too late in our book, but what do you make of that? I mean, have you seen him as a 12 ever at Exeter? I mean, I know he's not worn that shirt much, if at all.
No, he didn't. He didn't wear it much at Exeter when I was there. He was always, but he does. He comes into 12 position a lot for Exeter in terms of he's that ball player. The guy at the giving the ball out the back, and then they swap 12 and 13 quite a lot. Yeah. He's got the best skill set, isn't he, centre-wise, I think, in England. 12, he's going to definitely get the ball more. I feel like he's quite wasted at 13 for England. All he seems to do is chase kicks. You don't really... I'll be honest, he probably even would say, you haven't really seen the best of Henry Slade for England, compared to, if you look at the season that he had last year for Exeter, how good he was, ball in hand. He is pretty much, but he's got the physicality. What it shows me is they're going to obviously try and play a lot more against Australia, aren't they? In terms of putting him at 12, you're going to have Marcus Smith out the back, and they're going to try and play a bit more width, because I think you need to just get Fayabose to the ball as much as possible. Freeman, they need to be having 15 plus touches a game They're not having enough. They're having, 8 or 9. They're not getting their best players on the ball enough. Like Ben Earl, okay, well done, he can carry, but your most explosive player is that Fairbosa, Freeman. They're the ones that are going to do the damage, and they're not getting the ball enough. So whether
Ollie Lawrence made his last run on the 11th minute. He got 2 touches in attack. And the reason we like Henry Slade at 12 is I think all of us agree pretty much that Ollie Lawrence at 13, you get a much better opportunity to see his skill set. And he's pretty tidy in possession and quick and dynamic. But we just didn't see that at all on Saturday. So I suspect that to get the best out of him is also part of the thinking.
Yeah, 100%. So Slade would be the one at the line, and then they have Lawrence flat. He runs up really good out in like sometimes you don't even see him coming, do you? A little bit like when Jamie comes, because at 12 you're more or less a crash ball or your ball player. Slade is a ball player, but Lawrence is more of he has got the skill set, but he's selfish, isn't he? He wants to take players on. So, and then with Marcus Smith at the back, and then you got Fairbosa come in. And then Furbank and Freeman, that's a dangerous back line, and they're really not probably showing what they could do. They could be all pushing for Lions selection next year, all of them. So, and it's not like they've got an awful pack that's not giving them that front foot ball, is it? Ben Earl's having 20 odd carries. He's a workhorse and a half, isn't he? He just needs a bit more help, but. Yeah, their attack is just a bit stagnant at the moment. It'd be interesting to see against Australia side, who defensively they're a little bit all over the shot and they're driving more, isn't great. So whether England I don't know, you could probably see England going to that quite a lot. So yeah, I'm hoping just to see a little bit more spark and get Marcus Smith sort of on the front foot, because he is very good on the front foot.
At test level, Alex, did you enjoy playing in a structure where you had somebody like Jamie Roberts? I always thought there was a hell of a lot more to Jamie's game than Gainline. He started as a fullback and what have you. He had a big range of skills. I thought he was a very, very high class player. But the way Warren used him, he was pretty much Gainline, wasn't he? That was the starting point of everything. As a wing, did you enjoy playing in that kind of structure, or would you have liked something a little bit more fluid, let's say, for want of a better word?
Obviously, as a winger, I want ball in space, don't I? And to get that, you need that gain line, don't you? You need that first phase. You need to win that speed of ball in the first ruck. Then again, what Warren did well was he used the strengths. Jamie's first phase. Then it was like myself or George North round the corner next phase. Then Toby Faletau next. He specifically put the right players in the right place in terms of what they're good at, and then what that does, then it opens up open side space out wide, or they overfold, then you go down short side. So that's what it does. You need that 12. I always feel like you need a 12 that can do that gain line, that can give you that gain line, or whether you go you change the line out system where you bring your back row and he could be that first phase, and then you look to go a bit more fluid, like you said, trying to get width. But the game has sort of come back to now. It's just about having a really good scrum and really good maul, isn't it? A line. I feel like first phase you win that, and then you can choose your options. Yeah. Whereas the rules now, I just feel like defenses are winning a little bit too much. I think at the moment, if I'm honest, whether there needs to be less people in the front line so we can see a bit more, like you said, fluidity in attack and try to get width. We want to see the most exciting players on the ball. Who are they? The wingers, So it'd be interesting to see how they do go against Australia.
It's interesting that you say that we haven't seen the best of Henry Slade in an England shirt. I mean, it's almost wild hearing that about a 65 cap player. I absolutely agree. For the record, I think we all do. We sort of feel that maybe had he been played at 12 as well, he could have been, seen as a sort of world-beating centre, and he maybe hasn't quite hit those heights. Just give us a sort of window into, we obviously regard him very highly in the Gallagher Premiership in an Exeter shirt, but just how good he is. You've seen him behind the scenes in a way that very few have.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I'd love to tell you a few stories, but
I'll hear those as well.
We're good mates. I got on really well. We had a good connection at Exeter in terms of most of the tries I scored were coming off him, and he always looks to move the ball to width and space. at Exeter. I don't really see that so much as England. Obviously, international is a lot harder to do that in terms of, with the defences and so forth. But I feel like a 13, you don't really see him touch the ball enough, do you? So I think this is a good chance for him to show his skill set, his kicking game. Is underrated, I think, in terms of his skill set in terms of that. His left and right passing, his flat passing. There's not many centres who are able to put it on the dime like that too many times. Maybe someone like Hutchinson for Northampton, is pretty good at that. But he's a physical player. He's strong. He's a lot stronger than people think. He can do the dirty sort of work in terms of that gain line off 12 as well if needed. But what he is, he's quite a good voice. He speaks an awful lot, especially defensively as well, which is massive. I'm not sure how much Ollie Lawrence is a talker in terms of 13, but that'd be 13 defensively is a lot tougher, which is probably why Henry is playing 13 quite a lot for England, because defensively you need to be a good talker and making the right reads. He doesn't very often make the wrong reads. If you look at the 13s in international rugby, they seem to be there a long period of time, don't they? Like Jonathan Davis. Obviously in Scotland, you got Hugh Jones, haven't you? Have been there a while. So it's a specialist position, I think, 13. So, but Henry, he can play anywhere in that back line, really. He could.
I mean, it's a very weird situation, isn't it? Because we've been told for the last, both in New Zealand, when England were in New Zealand and coming back, that Henry Slade's importance to this team is that he is the linchpin of the blitz that they're working. So they obviously do not rate Australia's attack because their defensive pattern has now been, I don't know about dismantled, but certainly, it's going to look different.
It will be different, yeah.
And it seems to me to be a gamble.
Yeah.
If they've bedded in a blitz defense, they're suddenly going to switch to, just a press or what, I mean, I don't, it doesn't seem joined up to me. Can you see what they're about?
I think what we'll do, they'll probably give more onus on the wingers to really lead it. And then what happens then is fullback's got to work really hard and then blind wing. Because it's the way they defend is obviously the way South Africa defend, isn't it? With how hard they come and then fullback comes up early. But with South Africa, their work rate after they get broken, if you don't score or do anything reverse in the next 2 phases, they have complete control back again.
Yeah,
that's probably the difference between what they're trying to do and what South Africa are able to do. That takes time, if you look at when Sean Edwards went from Wales to France, if we look at the difference in their defence within 18 months, the first year, they weren't able to do it for 80 minutes. They weren't fit enough. You have to be incredibly fit to be able to do that defence. Because you think about that wingers running 40 yards near enough, 40 yards back, 40 yards up again, 40, constantly up and back. And then once you get transition, you're in attack. It's tough. Very, very tough, which is what Sean always says about how he'd come into a squad and he'd be like, "You lads, you're not fit enough." Straight away, we'd be working on that, and then he goes through the systems there. But England, it will take time. England, they're not always going to get it completely right. And what's hard is obviously when you go back to club, your defence is totally different, isn't it? And then you have to come back to international, and then it's different again. That's the hardest transition, and sometimes it does take a game or two to really nail it. So I can imagine them being a lot sharper this weekend at that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we don't know how the Wallabies are going to look. They've got Karevi back, and we know that the right side of their scrum is going to weigh about 600 kilos with Tupou and Skelton, which will be hefty. But I guess we'll wait for their team to be announced tomorrow. Let's revert back to Wales. Sorry, that was probably about 10 minutes longer than I expected to spend on England.
Wales a load of time on the haka.
You got them riled up.
Wales selection is actually a little bit more forecastable than maybe it was this time last year, Alex. Do you agree?
Yeah, I actually like the squad. I do. I think it's got a little bit more competition. I could probably name it, and I reckon I won't be too far off it. But there's still competition in certain areas. I think certain players coming back will really, really, really help that team. The likes of Thomas Williams, Gareth Anscombe, Will Rowlands. They'll be massive. Jack Morgan. They're going to be huge. Just maybe not so much on the field, but just off it. When you have a young squad, they're turning up and they're looking at what we're doing, who we relying on to ask Warren what we're doing or what we're doing today. Whereas now they know exactly what they're doing. That's why I think I keep coming back to the pressure is all on the coaches, because what I want to see is I want to see an identity of Wales. Like, what are they going to put their hat on, and what are they going to put a mark down to? What team are they going to be? Are they going to be real high blitz defense? Or are they going to look to move the ball? Are they going to be real forward? Are they going to be playing 21 patterns, 31 patterns? So around the corner. Just think. I don't know what Wales are at the moment. So when those players come back in, who have that experience, I'm hoping that they're going to, show and deliver. Obviously, what Warren wants Wales to look like. If you know what I mean.
What's your starting midfield, Alex?
I like obviously Gareth at 10. I like Eddie James. I think he's got a bit of class about him. He's not just a bruiser. He's got a real deft touch and his passing ability. And he's got this little skill where he looks like he's carrying to tuck, and then he's really good at drawing the last defender and putting players through holes just one-on-one. He's done that a fair bit this year for the Scarlets. And Max Llewellyn, I think he's our sort of, I guess not our only 13. I quite like Owen Watkin in terms of how his defence is really good, like underrated in terms of how he talks. Very good reader of the game defensively, but I think attacking wise, we need our 13 with the ball in hand a bit more. Into like the likes of when John Davis had the ball in that wide channel, he had that fend and offload. I think Max Llewellyn he's got the capabilities of doing that. He's 6'5", 6'6", he's huge, he's 112 kilo. He's fast. He can actually play on the wing as well, so he's shown a bit of versatility in terms of his speed as well. So I quite like that combination. But then we just go back to that. How do they want to play? Because then you could just go, right, we could have Ben Thomas at 12, and do we shift the ball a bit more and try and get it into the wide channels early? So, this has been the question probably for the last 18 months since Warren's come back, is that how do we want to see Wales play?
It's interesting. I mean, that's a hefty midfield, and if you've got Mason Grady on the wing, which you may well do as well, that's a hefty backline, almost reminiscent in a way of that backline you were part of. With you were the lightest player out of you, George North, Jonathan Davis, and Jamie Roberts, which obviously is saying something. Like, is that a coincidence, or do you think that is the sort of
Mike Phillips at 9 as well?
Mike Phillips at 9, very good point. Who was he probably
Reece Priestland at 10 as well, who's a good 6'3". So the back line was huge. I'm not. It's not a surprise. No, I think we've lacked that the last couple of years. Is that physicality, that size? Warren's blueprint isn't going to go far away from what's made him successful, is it? Really, the likes of when he was at Wasps to Wales, the Lions. It hasn't changed an awful lot, is it? The way they play, you don't see a lot of free-flowing rugby under Warren. It's pragmatic. It's win the middle third, win the kick battle, win that first phase, then you earn the right to go wide or decide short side. So international rugby is like it's sort of boring, really, isn't it? Because you win that middle third, then you have your opportunities within the 22. Then in terms of discipline that the team do, and that he always likes to go on about that. Like you give away less than 10 penalties a game, you've got a very, very high chance of winning the game. So. For the weekend, for me, is that they're not going to go away from that. It's all about winning the game. I don't think he'd care about how they win it. It'd just be about getting a win.
One of the sparks for the side at the World Cup was obviously Jack Morgan, who was magnificent, really. And then he's had the injury and what have you. Are we completely confident that he'll be back at his optimum pretty quickly? I mean, I have in mind, it wasn't the same severity, but I have in mind what happened to Ellis Jenkins. And Ellis was never quite the same guy as everyone knew he was going to be before the injury. I mean, Jack Morgan's not in that sort of area, is he?
No. Ellis, I'm good mates with Ellis. The difference between Ellis and Jack, Ellis has got no gas, whereas Jack has. But But Jack, no, if you watch the last game for Jack for the Ospreys against Edinburgh, he was back to his best. Good 3, 4, 5 turnovers. His carrying on edges, beating players. He's slowly sort of built back into his form. Obviously, he had quite a big injury and was out. And I think probably having that summer off would do him good. I think this season, I think he's come back well and looking really fit. He looks bigger. And he looks hungry, he looks like he really, really wants it. And I think not being named captain maybe for Wales is another thing that will probably help him a little bit as well. I think Derry really thrives on being captain, and you can see it. He's an absolute grafter. He's a tough he's a tough lad. Perfect guy to have captain's Wales at the moment. Speaks well, never backs down. I think Jack, it just takes that little bit of pressure. You can just worry about his own game. I think especially as he's probably fighting for that 7 jersey with Tommy Rafal. I'd have Jack starting. I think just what he offers all around the park. But Warren's already alluded to it. That will be a key battle between those two because they're not going to play together again. That's something that he's already highlighted.
He looked the Lions class back row at the World Cup, didn't he? But every inch of Jack Morgan had Lions written all over him. To my eye, he was very very good.
I mean, they've got Stardust as well, very much at scrum half. Thomas Williams, since he moved to Gloucester, I mean, he's been on fire. He looks absolutely tremendous to me. And the way that Gloucester have attacked with Gareth Anscombe and with Max Llewellyn as well, and Hathaway too on the wing. I mean, it's a very good building block for Warren, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. And it's something he said about, because I asked him the question when the squad was announced. I said, are you going to give Thomas and Gareth the reins in terms of, do you want them to attack like they obviously are at Gloucester, or are you going to rein them back in terms of you're going to let them be themselves, like the way they are at Gloucester? But then Gloucester seem to run out of puff, the last 10, 15 minutes playing that way, don't they? They're not seem to get the results. So I think Warren's spoken about is trying to find a middle line with playing the way he is, but then being obviously pragmatic enough in terms of, test match rugby is about winning territory battle, isn't it? The way the field, and not playing in the wrong areas, but playing in the right areas and kicking in the right time. So it's one of them where you go, right, Thomas, do what you've been doing, but do it in a pragmatic sort of way. So it's tough, isn't it? It's like you said earlier about bringing on Randall, but just play like Ben Spencer. So it's trying to find that middle line in terms of how they want to play. So that's the interesting thing, I think, with those two.
One of the sort of interesting debates, I mean, you mentioned Gareth Anscombe at 10, and I do think he's the likely starter, but Ben Thomas, as Gatland said, he's the best back in Wales at the moment, which is obviously a pretty bold claim. 25 years old as well. He's probably got age on his side a little bit more than Gareth does. Where do you think he comes in, and are you viewing him as a 10 or a 12 long term?
Oh, he's 100% 12. Yeah, he's not a 10 for me. His ball playing skills. The thing with playing 12, you probably touch the ball more than when you play 10, because in theory, a lot of the attack from scrum or line out is 12, 13 short, 10 out the back, isn't it? So you're pretty much playing a lot of the 10 position anyway. With him playing 12, mate, and this is the thing about, we always keep coming back to, how do Wales want to play? When you've got Gareth at 10, Ben Thomas at 12, then you're looking at a team that can play both sides of the ruck then, aren't you? In terms of takes the pressure off Cam Winnett, who's at 15, probably not the most talkative guy on the field, but give him ball and space, and he's got footwork to beat players. So that's what it will give you having Gareth at 10 and Benny Thomas at 12. But for me, he's always going to be a 12. His kicking game as well at 12 is pretty handy to have. I think Warren usually always likes to have a left footer within the back line. So it'll be interesting to see. I think one of the boys in the back line, he has got a left foot. I think, is it Hathaway? Has he got a left foot? I'm not sure. So that'd be interesting to see as well, in terms of Neil Jenkins always likes to have that left foot option, especially for exit. So there's competition in that back line, I feel, which is what they've been lacking the last probably 18 months.
Who was the quietest back in the side you played in, Alex?
The quietest back?
Yeah, I mean, you'd all assume Halfpenny, but
No,
was he more
pretty
talker than he led on?
Yeah, he was demanding in the backfield. He used to be really on to us. Yeah, he used to be always on to us about, making sure that we're just constantly switched on. It'd just be like little comments. It wouldn't be like shouting, like damn Big, like Biggs is like. I can hear Biggs on the other side of the field with 80,000 people screaming. I could still hear Biggs. But we were lucky. We had a back line where, we had Jamie, who was sort of our defensive leader. I used to love playing with Foxy, Jonathan Davis, because I'd never have to worry about my inside. He was just so good at making the right reads, which made my job obviously a lot easier. We were all pretty talkative, really. I think it was tough because obviously myself and George were pretty young, so we probably didn't need to speak as much as I definitely didn't speak as much back then as I did probably the experience I've had obviously with Exeter, and I sort of grew into a defensive role, a defensive winger when I was at Exeter, and then I went to Osprey. So it comes with experience, and those lads that do speak early on when they're young, they're quite rare, and that's what Warren is really trying to push a lot of those Wales young boys to be able to do, which having that experience out in Australia, people like Derry Lake stood up, and he's a big talker now within the squad. He's still a young lad, so that's what Warren's trying to install, because they're rare players. Those ones that do end up, they're being talkers and at a young age.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah,
Alex, we love a prediction on this podcast / hate as well, because we get most of them wrong. But how many wins are Wales getting this autumn? I'm going to stick my neck out, and I think you're getting 2. I think you're starting with 2, and then obviously I'm not backing you against the world champions.
I actually think we'll do all right against South Africa, because weirdly, you know exactly what you're going to get from them. They're just physical, and Wales always, if you look at Wales's record against South Africa, it's better than most teams. So, but yeah, I think they're going to be probably too strong. I think 2. They need 2 wins. I really do. I think they beat Fiji. And the last 9 losses, everyone will forget. That's what happens in Wales. So, I'm backing them for 2.
And that's a little bit of momentum into the Six Nations, isn't it? For the first time in pre-World Cup cycle, which is quite nice.
Yeah, because Six Nations is going to be a tough run. I think we've got France first on a Friday night, so doesn't get much tougher than that.
Is that in France?
Yes.
Okay.
I haven't looked at the schedules yet, but that is a pretty.
God, you don't get the queues on the M4 then. Those Friday night games in Cardiff were absolute. Shocking.
You have to make a week of it, mate. That's why.
Oh, desperate. Yeah, the queue started at Chippenham.
Which fixtures are you going to be at this autumn, Alex?
I'll go to them all. I'll go Sunday. We've got 2 Sunday games. And then obviously we've got South Africa Saturday game, which would be a good one. So yeah, I'll be down there. I'll probably take my kids to the first 2 on the Sunday just to get them out of the house, and then I'll probably have a few beers on the last game there.
Well, at least you don't have to pay 229 quid a ticket like you do at Twickenham.
No, I would not be paying 229. No, that is extortionate, by the way. But...
That's the lowest price, isn't it?
That was the point.
I've seen a lot more expensive than that as well, especially for the Six Nations. But Alex, let's finish off with that quick fire question round, if you're happy to, and then we'll wrap up in a couple of minutes or so, depending on how quick fire you decide to make it. Nickname?
I've got a few.
Okay.
No, I got
that's the PG.
Cuffy, Horse, Marv, or Arch.
Why Horse?
Oh, please.
Okay. Best rugby memory.
Best rugby memory would be this podcast. No, I've got a few. My favourite one, I think, is probably getting selected back for Wales, coming back from Exeter, thinking that I'd pretty much retired internationally, and then getting back in the squad. That was up there as one of my favourite ones. It felt really good, that one.
Most embarrassing rugby memory?
Losing to England.
Which time?
A few times, to be fair. My most embarrassing. I've got a few, but in terms of like on the field, Probably pants down. I think. Remember getting tackled into touch and didn't. Yeah, something like that. Silly.
Pre-game tune.
Beachy levels.
Post-game meal.
I didn't really have that. I didn't really eat. Probably a couple of pints. used to go straight to the bar.
There's some nutritional value there. Best player you played against.
Best player I played against, Israel Dag.
Best player you've played with.
Justin Tipperick is one, and Joe Rokakoka.
Nice. Best favorite player right now.
Favorite player right now. Everyone probably says DuPont. He's pretty good to watch. I like Damon. I like Pinot.
Nice.
He's pretty.
I like that.
Yeah, he's a good player. I like it. I like just the way he plays. Good game.
Rugby idol.
Rugby idol. I probably tough one, that one. I don't know. It's cringy, isn't it? But probably my old man. Really, that's probably why I got into rugby. So something like that. Cringy.
I don't think anyone.
Or Johnny Wilkinson.
I think that's a first. No one's ever said their dad before. I mean, no one's ever said your dad either.
No one's said my dad. Yeah, but no, I'll be unless people from Westfield 7 might say it, but no, no, I've. You know, my memory.
It's getting a bit Forrester Deeney now, isn't it?
Yeah, this is getting very Forrester Deeney. Away to Drybrook, good story.
Favorite stadium.
I loved obviously Principality is probably up there, but I think one of my favourite ones would be probably the one in Brisbane.
Yeah,
Suncorp. First test Lions. That was good.
Favorite gym exercise.
I'm not gonna lie. I didn't do that much gym other than a couple of guns. Probably bicep curl.
I could see the cogs in your brain whirring there, saying, "Don't say curl. Don't say curl."
Is that in front of a mirror?
Oh yeah, on all sides.
I can answer that. Yeah, always. Occupation if rugby didn't exist.
Horse trainer.
Nice. Superstitions.
I have to sit on the right side of the bus when I used to drive in to watch when I was with Wales, because it was I'd always see my parents before I go in the stadium. That was just a thing.
Oh, nice.
Brilliant.
Two shouts out to the parents.
Cringy,
Rugby law you would change.
Pardon?
Rugby law you would change.
Less people in the front line. I think you have to have at least 2 to 3 people in your own 22 at all times.
Best thing about working in rugby.
Nights out.
Fair play.
Some very unique answers in that, Alex, but that was great.
Yeah.
You'd rather that, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Almost bang on the hour mark. Well, Alex, massive thank you for your time. It's nice to be talking about Wales with a slightly optimistic outlook ahead of the autumn. And yeah, fingers crossed. Unlike you boys hating us winning, you know, I'm keeping my fingers crossed to see some Wales wins this autumn.
I don't hate you boys winning. I don't hate it.
Only when you're on the field.
Exactly.
But no,
I
thanks
appreciate it, boys.
For joining us, Alex. And
no worries.
Cheers, Alex.
That was
Cheers, guys.
Brilliant fun. Thanks, Alex. Good fun.
No worries, lads. I'll see you soon, all right?
Of the Rugby Paper podcast, and don't forget to subscribe on whichever podcast platform you use and recommend the show to your friends. The Rugby Paper is available to buy every Sunday, and to make sure you don't miss it, subscribe through our print, digital and online options at therugbypaper.co.uk/subscriptions. That's therugbypaper.co.uk/subscriptions to get all our content for as little as 14p per day.